Welcome back to the channel for another video on our 22 WRX. The last video left you guys on a little bit of cliffhanger. We do have a 6-speed swap over here. So today we're going to be talking about everything we have ready to get this swap done. Now I know we have a lot of questions about this swap and what works. There's been a couple things going online about especially the rear axles. I did see one post about the drive shaft not fitting. I think they had a 08 to 2014 drive shaft, because they are slightly shorter. This is a 15 plus drive shaft, so according to other people or other shops that have done this swap, they do use the 15 plus STI drive shaft coupled with a matching rear diff with an STI 6-speed trans. But during this install process, we're gonna go over everything step by step, and we're gonna figure out what works and what doesn't work. But enough talking, let me show you what we got over here. All right, so here we have our full STI 6-speed drivetrain swap. We'll start over here and we'll end with the Mac Daddy, the big transmission over there. So starting from over here, obviously you do see we have our STI drive shaft. This is our R180 diff. It is a LSD. You do see it does have the temp sensor for the plug, and that is our drain there. Do have the diff cradle there, starter. These are our rear axles, front axles. I do know the front axles, the stock front axles should work with this trans, but the swap that I got did come with front axles, so we'll just be comparing the STI front axles with these WRX axles, and whichever ones are better, whichever ones are beefier, we'll put in the car. So moving over, obviously we got our brand new pressure plate and clutch from ACT. So I do have new pressure plate bolts here, our new release bearing, alignment tool, clutch, and then below it is our pressure plate. This is the ACT XTSS. So this is the extreme. So this is, I believe it's good up to it's like 590 foot-pounds of torque. So this is gonna be plenty good for what we're trying to do. We have our brand new OEM flywheel underneath all this junk. I'll tell you in just a sec. This is our OEM flywheel I got from Subaru. Brand new flywheel bolts. So here's just some miscellaneous gaskets, a new clutch spring because they did not have a clutch spring on our trans. So I just got brand new fill and drain plugs for the trans and the diff. And it's just another gasket right there. So these wires that you see here, this is from iWire. So this is going to plug into the transmission, and then these two are going to plug into the existing harness on the WRX. This plug we will talk about later on more in detail, but this plug does go to what you would want to plug into as far as your DC-CD controller, or DCCD, yeah, the DCCD controller, the driver control center diff. So with just plugging this in, it does put the trans in like rear wheel drive biased. So it's like a 60-40 split roughly. I've been doing a lot of research on how to hook this up and the proper way to do that. Flat Iron Tuning was a huge help when doing some of this research. So they did say it is perfectly safe to run the car or run the trans with this and not hooking up the DC-CD controller right away or the SI drive. It does just put it in rear wheel drive bias, so that's like a 60-40 split. So that'll be pretty cool for a while until we do get our controller set up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Obviously we just have, this is just a insulator and a bracket for, this just goes onto the trans or onto the shifter assembly. And then here's our STI trans. So we do have a cartboy shifter on it. I did try to sprucing it up. I did clean it up a little bit. Some new accessories. I got a brand new reverse cable on there. So it does go into reverse super easy now. Where's the old cable? Here's the old cable. So did have a fray in the line. It was the bearing over here. Pull this thing. bearing over here is all rusty, and yeah, this side's all broken. This side look okay, but regardless, junk. Got this brand new unit on there. Goes right into reverse. Goes into all the gears pretty smooth. No issue. And you want to make sure that you have a 15 plus linkage. Sorry, an 08 plus linkage. So 08 to 2021 for the STI, it uses the same linkage. So just make sure that you have an 08 plus linkage. This also, I do have the bushings down here for the shifter bushing and the rear shifter bushing here. So I already went ahead and just re-greased everything. Took this apart, re-greased it. Brand new slave on here. This is the clutch slave. It didn't have a little boot, so I got a new boot for it. Cleaned up some of the hoses, and that's just how it sits right. So this is our full STI swap that we have going on here. The last thing that I do have coming, it's this little plate right here. So it actually bolts onto the engine. This is the clutch inspection plate or the dust shield. So the stock one for the WRX doesn't work because the flywheel is different than the STI. I guess the last thing I need to show you guys is our diff controller. So we are going to be using the OEM SI drive. So the knob's actually not going to do anything. The auto and manual button are, and then our plus and minus are. So I didn't get the unit to get this hooked up yet because it is like an extra $800 to get that. I want to make sure that the trans and everything is working properly. Get the clutch installed, the clutch broken in. We are going to be getting a retune from Mikey Body. Now, since we don't have a limitation of the stock clutch, we can really see what we can make with this current setup. But overall, super excited for everything to come. But other than that, we have everything ready for this swap. When we start this swap, we're going to start from the back and go forward. So I'll take the stock rear diff out, stock axles, and take the drive shaft out. And we'll get the R180 mounted, axles in. We'll check the axles and everything. We'll put them side by side, get a full comparison. That'll be like the next episode. After that, then we'll just start moving forward. We'll get the transmission out. We'll get the ACT clutch installed, and then we'll get the 6-speed put in and button everything up. So stay tuned for more content on this swap. Obviously, I've never done this swap before, so we're going to be learning together. So definitely put in the comments if you think I'm missing something. I already know the axles might be a little short. They said they were 3/4 of an inch short, but I know a couple people that are running them, so should be good to run them temporarily. I know DRP, they have some new axles that just came in, I believe last week. So I'm sure those are going to be at some point like an off the shelf for like a swap for this car. So we'll definitely swap to those in the future if that is an issue. But like I said, we're going to be doing this together. We're going to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I pray that all of it works. So stay tuned for more 2022 WRX content. We're going to start this 6-speed swap in the next episode. Let's go. WRX. In episode 1, we did go over all the parts that we have for the swap. We did go over the game plan as well. We are going to be attacking this from the back and working ourselves forward. So we already have the car on the air, so you already know what we're going to be doing. We're going to be working in the back today. We're going to get the stock diff out, the axles. We're going to get those measured and everything and see what they are compared to the STI stuff. And then we're going to get everything put in. So enough talking, let's get to that. Let's go. let me get you guys caught up on everything we did in that little time lapse. So I did obviously have to open the garage to get this exhaust out. So we did get the exhaust taken off and just the front portion of the J pipe. So I did just drop it all in one. Once it dropped, I just disconnected the back tail of the J pipe right there. And then underneath the car, so I did get the heat shield off. So we are ready at this point to get the drive shaft taken out. So we have a few bolts on the back of the drive shaft, and then we have 2 on the carrier bearing, and then we should be able to pull it out. But before we do that, I do want to drain the diff. So let me get the fluid drained out of the diff, and then we'll get the drive shaft taken out. Let's go. All right, now that the diff is drained, we're going to work on taking the drive shaft out. We have 2 bolts for the carrier bearing. I believe those are 14. And then we have 4 bolts holding the drive shaft to the differential. Those are 12 mils. So let's get all those bolts taken out. We should be able to get this drive shaft pulled out. All right, I did get that garage door closed just so we can get some AC in this garage again. But now we have our first comparison. We have the STI drive shaft on the left, the WRX on the right. So you can see they are, let me line them up like just like that. So you can see the WRX is longer. And then like this bearing, it is different. It does split in the middle here, where the WRX is just basically a one piece. It's not like a true one piece like a carbon fiber or like an aluminum drive shaft, but because it does still have that carrier bearing there. But you can see that the WRX is a little bit longer than the STI. So all that's left to get the rear end done, we just need to get the diff dropped out. We should be able to just take the 2 bolts out of the diff carrier and then 2 in the back, and we should be able to drop it, and then we can just pull the axles out. I do have the, I think this is a 32 mil. Let me see. Yes, this is a 32. So this does go over our axle nut, so we should be able to zip that off with our impact. Then we should be able to just take the axles right out, and then we'll get an axle comparison and a diff comparison, and we'll go from there. Let's go. Okay, live action. Just before I was about to go under the car and start working on taking the diff out, we got our another part for the swap. This is the flywheel or the clutch cover for the STI trans. So let me show you where this goes. This just fills in this little gap that we were talking about in the first video. And like I said, this is just like an inspection plate or like a dust shield for the clutch. So let's get back to this swap. I'm going to get under the car. I'll get you guys set up and we'll start taking this diff out. Let's go. So we got the stock rear diff out, the stock axles out, so you can get a good comparison of what both of them look like. So WRX on the right, STI on the left. Same thing right here, STI on the left, WRX on the right. So you do see that the axles are a little short. I did measure them. It's about a half inch short. So we're just going to do a full send on it. I mean, everyone else is doing it that has done this swap already. Once the correct length rear axles come out, we will be purchasing those and putting them in. Just for a quick comparison, you can see the girth of the STI versus the WRX. STI is much beefier. We do have the new axle nuts here that will go in. I did just check if the WRX ones would fit in the STI diff. The WRX is a little bit smaller. You can see the STI is a little bit beefier here. Obviously, same thing with the shaft. So obviously the WRX does not fit in the STI diff. Obviously these fit in perfectly fine. So we're going to do this in reverse order. We're going to get the STI diff put in. Just looking at both of the diff cradles, they look exactly the same. So I think we're just going to use the WRX one since I already have the upgraded Torque Solutions bushings in, and it's just brand new. I mean, this does have some like weathering on it. I mean, this thing's brand new. So we're just going to use the 22 WRX hardware to get the STI diff put in, and we'll continue on from there. Let's go. STI diff is mounted. Nothing's tight yet, but I got the 2 bolts up there, 2 bolts on the side, 2 underneath. Diff is in. The jack's not actually holding anything, but diff is bolted in. Just need to tighten everything up. And then when I came out to check, I saw that our axles are sticking out, so now is a good time just to spin on our brand new axle nut. So we'll obviously torque everything down later on. Let me go check the other side to make sure that axle's popping through as well. And there we go. So there you go. STI axles are in, nuts are on. So all that's left is just to tighten everything down for the back, and we are all set for the rear end. There we have it. Everything's all done. Axle nuts on, dented in the little bottom part. Everything's torqued down underneath. Everything is good to go. So the last thing that we're going to do, we're going to get the diff filled up. So we're going to take the fill plug out, which is that sensor. It actually doesn't go to anything. And then we have a replacement drain plug and then washers for both. So we're going to get the diff filled up right now with the gear fluid Motul Gear 300. And we'll be all set with the rear end. Go. Rear diff fluid has been changed. We put some new Gear 300 Motul in. Everything's all buttoned up underneath. We are all set. So that about wraps up episode 2 of our 6-speed swap. We did get the stock WRX diff out, drive shaft and axles, and then we installed our STI rear diff and axles. Now the axles were a little bit short, but they did poke through and we were able to get the nuts on them and torque them down. So stay tuned for episode 3. Episode 3, we're going to be taking the transmission out, and then we're going to be putting the flywheel and ACT clutch on. We have a lot of things happening on this channel, so jump on board, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya. For episode 3 of 6-speed swapping our 22 WRX. In the last episode, we did get the stock diff out, the drive shaft, the axles, and we did get the R180 STI diff in with those axles. So in today's episode, we're going to be working on the front of the car. We're going to first get the wheels taken off, get the fluid drained out of the transmission, and we're going to work on getting this trans out of the car. Once we get this transmission out, we'll be putting in our OEM STI flywheel and our ACT clutch. So we have a lot in store for this episode. Enough talking, let's get to work. Let's go. All right, with everything drained and the wheels taken off, next we're going to work on getting this axle taken off. It's the same 32 mil nut for the axle nut right there. We're going to disconnect the strut, maybe the end link, probably not the end link, but we are going to mark the top bolt. The top bolt is a camber bolt, so we do want to make sure we put that in the same way. So I'm just going to mark it on the strut and on the bolt to make sure when we put this all back together with the STI axle, we don't need to get an alignment afterwards. So let me get you guys set up and we'll get this axle taken out. All right, with that quick little time lapse done, we do have one of the axles out. So it's this bad boy right here. So you can just see side by side just from the one comparison. The STI one is definitely much beefier. As far as the length goes, yeah, these are a little short too, but I mean, we're gonna throw them in. We're gonna see if they fit, but everyone else has been using these front ones too, so I don't think we're gonna have an issue. Just like with the rears, we had no issues. But to take this axle out, it was just that 32 mil nut right here. We had the 219 on the strut. I did disconnect our brake line and then just unclip our speed sensor right here, and that was enough to let it fall forward, and then I could pull the axle out the back here, and then I just used this little crowbar here and just like pulled it out of the trans, so you can see there it was. So we're going to replicate this on the other side. We're going to get the other axle taken out. Same procedure, 32 mil nut to take off the axle, the 219s, 12 mil here, and then this little guy. We should be able to just pull that axle out. So let me get you guys set up and we'll get that axle taken out. Let's go. All right, so we got that axle taken out all the way through the transmission. So let's go back over here and we will look at all the WRX axles, because we have all of the stock axles out. You see the pink STI ones next to it. You see the STI one's a little bit beefier. It's also slightly shorter, but I'm not sure if the transmission's wider or not. We will obviously compare once we get this transmission out. But I think we're done working under the car for a little bit. We're going to actually start working up here. I'm going to get the ETS front mount pipe off, and we're going to take the starter out, the clutch slave out. before we do any of that, we are going to disconnect the negative terminal. We haven't disconnected it yet since we haven't taken anything electrical off the car. It's all been just nuts and bolts, mechanical stuff. So we're going to take this electrical connector off since we are going to be unplugging and disconnecting the starter. So let me get you guys set up and we'll start working up top. All right, let me get you guys updated on what we did. So we got obviously the charge pipe off for the front mount. We did get the starter out. We got the IG pinch mount out, and we got our slave off. It's just pushed to the side over there. So the last thing to do, obviously, is just to get the bell housing bolts off and take the trans cross member off. But before we do that, we do need to get the shift linkage and everything taken out. So let's jump on the inside. Let's disassemble the inside real quick, just so we get that shifter assembly out. So we got our stock shifter assembly out. So if you look inside the car now, we can see straight through it. So we just got the cables pushed through the little hole there, the two holes on this back side, and then these two clips. Those two clips are actually a pain to get off. I had to use that breaker bar to pry them off. So looking up here, looks like the only thing left to do is basically disconnect the bolts for the bell housing on the trans and the trans cross member, and this thing should be ready to go. We do have this one ground wire I do see here, so there might be one of those. I'm going to check real quick, see if there's any extra ground wires or anything I need to take off. I already got these clips out right here, so that's good to go. Obviously the pinch stop is out. We're basically ready to get this thing pulled. I'm going to start taking some of these bolts out, and I'm going to leave the cross member in right now just so obviously it doesn't drop or anything. But let's get these bolts taken off on the bell housing, and I'll catch up with you guys in just a minute. All right, so all the bell housing bolts are out. Got them all in their locations of where they came out. So last thing to do is just take off that transmission cradle. I do have the trans jack ready, so I'm going to get this wheeled under. I'll get it secured to the trans, and we'll start unbolting everything. And just looking up here, since this is a brand new car, you can already see it's already starting to split. I can put like my fingernail in between it. Could probably fit a flathead in there if I wanted to, but obviously it's not going to fall out, so it's still bolted to the car. But it is already splitting, so that's a good sign that it's not going to give me very much trouble to disconnect it from the motor. So we get you guys set up under the car. We're going to get this trans jack put under, and we'll get this trans pulled out. Let's go. right, let me get you guys caught up on what we did on that long time lapse. We got the transmission out, we got the stock clutch and the flywheel out. So it is ready for the STI flywheel and the pressure plate. We actually need to install this bad boy first. So this is the clutch dust shield. So this goes on the bottom. There is one on the car. It's just two 10 mils. So I'll just go under and take that off real quick, and we'll bolt that on. And then the stock STI flywheel can go on, and then we'll get the ACT clutch and pressure plate installed. But this is how everything looks. I was looking at the stock clutch. I hope it picks it up on camera, but you can see there. Yeah, you can. This is the stock clutch is a Exetti, and there's the part number. So I'm actually really surprised. The clutch actually doesn't look bad. Clutch is actually in good condition. There's a lot of life left on it. So you can see all like how much life is left, because you can see the rivets and how much is there. And then yeah, stock flywheel, nothing special there, but everything looks really good. So I mean, the stock clutch and everything was really holding up. It was definitely I was definitely pushing the limit at, I mean, we're over 400 wheel torque and horsepower, and this is a stock clutch. So I mean, this thing, it took everything. It never slipped. It was great. But on to bigger and better things. We got our new ACT clutch. Once we get this flywheel installed and the clutch installed, we are going to call it a day on episode 3. So let me get under the car and let's get this plate swapped out for the for the flywheel, and then we'll get the flywheel and clutch put on. Let's go. All right, we made it. End of episode 3. We have the transmission out. Let me show you guys. We got the ACT clutch, OEM flywheel. Everything is on and torqued down. You saw in the time lapse, I torqued it down like 4 or 5 times. I'm just super paranoid about it backing out or anything like that. I did put blue Loctite on everything. The wife came out, helped me. She was passing me the bolts as she was putting Loctite on them. And she actually held the crank for me while I torqued everything down. So huge shout out to the wife for helping me out on this one. Let's get back up. But we finished episode 3. Everything is in as far as the ACT clutch. We got the transmission out and everything. Now, this is the first time I've ever removed a transmission by myself, let alone on my own car. So the only reason I'm telling you guys that is because anyone can do this project if you have the right tools. This is just a Harbor Freight transmission jack, nothing special. I just got some regular hand tools and everything, and then a Ryobi impact gun, and I just have all my attachments for that. Well, if you guys are liking this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also like this video. We'll be having the next episode coming out shortly. We will get the transmission put in the next episode, and we'll go from there. See you guys. In the last episode, we got the WRX transmission removed, and we got our STI flywheel and ACT clutch kit installed. Hopefully this is our last episode, as we don't have that much left to do to wrap up this swap. Now it has been a few days since I worked on it because I have been working. On my lunch breaks, I do have about 30-40 minutes to work, so I have been coming out here off camera just doing a little things here and there, just getting it prepped for basically the finale or episode 4. And while I was out on my lunch break the other day, I was able to actually get the trans under the car and actually just slipped it on. So let me show you what I did off camera real quick. So over here you can see I did get the transmission connected to the motor. So this was very difficult to do by myself. So I did do this by myself. I did have the nifty transmission jack over here to help me. So I got the transmission tied to this, tied to the transmission jack. I got it jacked up and it can go about 95% of the way. Once I got pretty close, I lined it up with the two like dowels that stick out, or the two the two studs. And from the front, I just picked up the front of the trans and slid onto it. And then I just jacked up the back of the trans to make sure it was like even and like level. And then I just like shimmied the front of the engine and the transmission up here, and I got to cinch up actually pretty close. And then I just started fishing the bolts through. I got it snugged up pretty good. Nothing's tight, nothing's been torqued down, but all the bolts are in. I did obviously get the starter put in, and so I actually got the starter, and then I tried to put the clutch slave in. That didn't work, so I had to take the starter back out to get the 2 bolts in for the clutch slave. And then I just got the pinch mount loosely on here. The bolt's still moving everything. So nothing's been torqued down or anything. And then for the ground for the trans, I did just steal the ground from here. We didn't get any of the wires or anything hooked up, so we will be doing all of that in this episode. And just real quick, underneath the car, you can see I don't even have the transmission cross member on. I just replaced the transmission jack with just a floor jack. Now, I do have good news. I was able to reuse the WRX transmission mount because, we did upgrade that in one of our previous videos. That is a JDM STI trans mount, so it is significantly stiffer than, especially an OEM STI mount that's a few years old. So I was really pleased that the mount actually transferred right over, bolts lined right up. So I only have 2 bolts in, and they're just like loose. Like I said, nothing's tight. So we're going to be tackling all this in this episode. So I apologize for doing some things off camera, but we did just go over everything that I did. I was more concentrated on not getting hurt or anything while being under the car and holding the transmission by myself and getting onto the engine and rocking the engine back and forth. But we were successful, and it is possible. It took me about a solid hour to get the trans hooked up to the engine. But enough talking, let's get started on getting all these bolts torqued down. So we'll get underneath the car and we'll start torquing all the bell housing bolts. They do get torqued down to 37 foot-pounds, so I do already have my torque wrench already set. So we're gonna go under and get all these bolts torqued down. So enough talking, let's go. All right, so after that short little time lapse, we got all the bell housing bolts tightened down, everything torqued to 37 foot-pounds. We got the cross member on, we got the trans mount on, and I did want to show you guys our I-wire harness that we have for the trans. So I wanted to actually show you guys how that works. So it literally just plugs right in, just like that. And then you have these 2 colors. So let's get the brown one. See if I can do this with one hand. All right. So let me just switch you guys. All right. Here's the brown one. Plugs in. Take the gray one. Plugs right in. So there you go. That's literally just how easy it is. It just plugs right in. Harness is hooked up. Now we're just gonna tuck this one over here. We'll probably get it zip tied to this mount right over here. So this is for the, if we were to hook up the DC-CD controller, our SI drive. So it does actually come with the harness to plug into here and then wires to go through the firewall. We're just gonna get this put to the side for now. And once we get the DC-CD control in the future, we will get that hooked up. Now, the next thing that I want to get working on, I do want to try to get our shift linkage in. So I did take this one bolt out here, so we will just reattach it onto the trans with that, and then we can put our, now the bolt, two of them, front shift. So I did take this one bolt out here, so we will just reattach it onto the trans with that, and then we can put our front shifter bushing in, the two lower shifter bushing bolts in for the lower shifter bushing, and then this can just go back onto the transmission. Now the bolts for the rear shifter mount, you do just have to go to the store and get these. I think these were M8 by 1.25. Just get two of them, just some that are just long enough to go through here. The car already has the provision for these holes, so you don't need to worry about drilling or tapping or anything. It already has the holes for these mounts. So enough talking, let's get this shifter put in. Guys, caught up on that quick time lapse that we had. I did get a little carried away and just started going at it because we're so close to being done. So we did get the shifter and everything installed in the beginning. All the interior and everything's put back like nothing ever happened. And everything works great. Underneath, we got the drive shaft and everything hooked up. For the suspension, we got the front axles in, everything is torqued down, strut is reinstalled, brake lines on, speed sensors on, and then obviously same thing for the other side. So I do have it set up right now to start bleeding the new clutch slave. I did try bleeding it by myself just a little bit, just enough to so the clutch doesn't even, well, the clutch stuck to the floor. Now it does have some give and it does spring back, so I will get the wife come out here to help me with that in a little bit. And underneath the car, I do have it draining right now. I do have the trans draining. We are going to be using the BBR cocktail. So we do have our red line lightweight shot proof and our 75 weight 90. So we'll get all of this put into the trans, and then we'll get this clutch bled, and we'll get this exhaust on, and we will be all done with the swap. So let's go. Just like that, we got our exhaust on. Everything's all buttoned up underneath. So I think we're ready for our first start. I still do have the bleeder right here, still hooked up to the clutch slave. Everything's hooked up, battery's hooked back up. And we still don't have the wheels on yet. The car's still in the air, but I do want to get it started, and I do want to check to make sure we have no exhaust leaks and make sure it goes into gear and everything. So let me get you guys set up. We'll get this started up. Fast forward a few days, we have the clutch fully bled. Obviously the car's on the ground. The swap is 100% complete. I have 45 miles on the swap so far. We've had zero issues, zero creaks. I mean, everything is just running smooth. Everything sounds normal. The ACT clutch, it's much stiffer than the stock one. This is the extreme clutch. So the pressure plate and the whole clutch kit, everything's rated for like 598 foot-pounds of torque. So it is significantly stiffer than the stock clutch. So here how everything's looking now with the swap complete and everything. I do have my flashlight over here so you guys can see everything. That's over there. So you can see the trans harness, everything's hooked up, our ground's hooked up. I mean, everything, it's a better view, everything's hooked up. I mean, everything's good to go. I mean, we got cars on the ground, everything's tight. We got, like I said, about 45 miles on this swap. Everything is smooth. I will keep you guys updated on the swap and how everything goes. Obviously, we're gonna be continuing making videos on this car. So if we have any issues pop up, you guys will be the first ones to know once we have something go on, and we'll be solving those issues on this channel. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little mini series. We got the full STI 6-speed drivetrain put in, the transmission, differential, all the axles, the drive shaft. Everything is from a 15 plus that fits in. And of course we have the ACT clutch and the OEM flywheel installed. So now we can really throw the power at this thing and really have no fear of the clutch or the transmission breaking. Once the clutch is fully broken in, we will get a retune from Mikey Body, so we will be doing some update videos on the swap and how our tune goes with him once that process starts. And once like everything is done and we know like the swap is good and there's no issues come up or anything, we will be getting the DC-CD controller so we can hook up our stock SI drive from a 15 plus STI. So when we do that, we will be able to control the where the power goes front or rear. We can lock the diffs, but we're probably just gonna have it in auto mode most of the time, so the computer can adjust power front to back based off of what the traction or what that situation is like. Currently with the iWire harness hooked up, the car is in, if you had the option to select on like the diff controller, this would be full rear wheel drive biased. So that's like maybe like a 60-40 split. So that's still not bad or anything, but it is stuck in that like 60-40 split. So 40 to the front, 60 to the back. But that's all future stuff. We'll deal with that when the time comes. But be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more 22 WRX content. Until next time, see you guys.